Hey, welcome back, my friend. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination, how it affected me, and I want to kind of give back to what his legacy is. And I understand that he was a polarizing character, that you maybe really disliked him, or maybe you really liked him, or maybe you've never heard of him. But despite what your feelings are about him, I think what he was doing was so important. He was talking. And I feel like that's something in this world that we've lost, is the civil conversations with someone that you don't agree with. And so today I'm going to talk about what I learned about debating and maybe even arguing like Charlie Kirk, and give you some insights that I think that I learned from him, and some things that I've learned in my own life talking to people that I don't agree with and that I feel are wrong, and how important that is in a modern society that we are able to do that. Step one, when you are having a disagreement with somebody, I think the context and the location is going to be so important. I have yet to see an online conversation, meaning typing back and forth, that has ever really been helpful, other than maybe in just a pure sense of you think something and I have like material evidence to the contrary. For instance, when I was a younger paramedic, I went to a shooting, and it was three people got shot, and I transported one of them to the hospital. And in the morning, I was still living home. I got home. My mom said, she was reading the paper. She said, "Wow, did you see that shooting last night in Pontiac?" I said, "Yeah, I was there." She's like, "It's crazy that 2 people got shot." And I said, no, 3 people got shot. She said, no, I just read it. They said 2. And I was like, "Mom, I was there." Now, it was a minor disagreement that we were having. I had material evidence to the contrary. And so I was able to say, "No, Mom, I literally saw all 3 people that were shot, and the Oakland Press got it wrong. Maybe they only knew about 2 of them, but it was, that was okay for me to say, no, you're wrong. This is the truth." But for the most part, when you're online, you just don't have the opportunity to do that, to actually have a valid back and forth with another human being. So step one in debating is don't do it online. I really don't see the benefit of you expressing your disagreement with somebody else online. It just doesn't work. I don't think that's how humans were designed to communicate and disagree, and then come to a conclusion where maybe both of you come out a little bit more educated, because it's very adversarial. And when I got online after the death of Charlie Kirk, and dude, there were some terrible things said. Like, I just can't. I'm like, "Man, I know you don't agree with him, and I don't agree with everything he said. There were some things that I didn't agree with, but to put that online over the death of a husband, of a father, that was just rough." So step one, don't do it online. I just don't see the point. I feel like it's bad. If you're arguing with somebody online, both of you end up disliking the other person more. There's no chance you're going to change your mind whatsoever, and there's no chance they're going to change their mind. You just drive a wedge between your relationship, if you had a relationship. And maybe this is a totally random person. You just enjoy, doing that, I guess. I don't think it's good. So step one, if you're going to have a disagreement with somebody, you're going to have an argument, you're going to have a debate, do it in person when you can look them in the eye. I think that's really important. Number 2, realize that there's no way that everything you believe is true, that the opinion that you have could be false. It could be invalid. It could be slightly different than what you actually believe. Believe that you are doing or thinking something that 10 years from now, you will have changed your thoughts. I think that's really important. The other day I was teaching in the fire academy, and I told them, like, "Listen, guys, I want you to have an open mind for your entire career, because there's something I'm teaching you over this next 11 months or 11 weeks that in 5 years from now, we'll find out that it was false, that we have new technology that has changed what we're thinking. So you have to have an open mindset." Some people go to school, they go to trade school, they develop an opinion, and they will not change at all. They are not going to allow themselves to think that something could be different. And that's just not true. Life changes, the world changes, technology changes. What you know, everything you know can't be true. That's step two. Be in person and realize that what you believe could change. Step three is realizing that if you are arguing or disagreeing with somebody, I feel like there's two things to argue about. One is a difference of opinion, and I think this is really important. This is how you get different. This is how you open up your mind. And that would be like the other day we had a argument at work, and one thing I really appreciate about my job is there's people that don't agree with me. There's people that think that what I think is wrong, and I think what they think is wrong. But it's not a moral thing. We were talking about a minimum wage, and we were going back and forth on whether or not increasing the minimum wage was good and the pros and cons. And that's not there's no moral component to that. I have some feelings and thoughts about it based on the way I feel human nature is, the way I feel economy works, and the other person had a different opinion, and we went back and forth, and we both had points and counterpoints. And, at the end of the day, we both heard another opinion, and, I maybe changed my mind a little bit, and maybe they changed their mind a little bit, and it was good. It was a good conversation, and we're still friends, and we still don't see eye to eye on that, and that was okay. And when you have these kind of conversations, one of the things I think that's important is to realize, what is your goal? And in most debates, in most arguments, if your goal is to win and to beat your idea into that person's head, and you have failed if they don't believe the way you feel, I think that's probably going to be a failed conversation. So when I'm in these debates, when I'm in these arguments, my goal is to clearly articulate my thoughts. And then that's my primary goal. My secondary goal is if they ask me, hey, in your words, what do you think that I feel like? So I'm trying to understand where they're coming from, even if I don't agree. One of my goals is to be able to articulate their main thoughts so that I fully put it in my brain. I see where they're coming from, and I could repeat it back to them, even if I don't agree with it. I'm like, this is why you believe this, this, and this. And I think that's something that Charlie was really good at. He was really good at articulating his thoughts. His thoughts had logic and reason, and the people he was debating with didn't believe in that logic or reason, but it was consistently logical, and it was intellectually consistent. And to me, that's what a good debate is. That's what a good argument is. And what I found sometimes is when I've had these arguments and these debates, I wasn't able to clearly articulate my idea. I knew kind of what I thought, but when pressed on it, why, I couldn't answer the question, which allowed me to go back into my life and study a little more and to understand a little more and to more clearly, line it up in my head so that was logical. So next time I have this discussion, I'm better able to articulate my ideas, because that's what a good debate is. That's what a good discussion is. It's not like, hey, I want to change your mind. It's, this is what I believe and this is why I believe it. And it follows this logical pattern. And that is if I can do that in an argument or a debate, I think that's successful. I know I can't change someone's mind. Now, someone else can change their own mind. Maybe I'll say something and they say, yeah, you know what? There's some logic behind that. And I've never thought of that, because I've had the same thing happen to me. Someone would say something. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I never thought that through. So I think having a good debate means sharing your thoughts, sharing your ideas in the most logical way possible. I think that's important. Now there's the other argument, the moral argument, where I do think I'm right. And I think I have a moral stance, and I'm probably, as long as my morals stay the same, I'm not going to change my mind. And these can be a little more heated, right? Because I'm not willing to back up and say, okay, I see what you're saying and I agree with you. Because if it's a moral thing, I think that's deeper than just my thoughts and ideas on whether minimum wage is good or not. One of those for me would be the topic of abortion. I have a moral stance on what I believe is right and wrong with abortion. And I don't think I'm going to be swayed to change my mind because it's based on a moral argument. Now, one of the challenges with a moral argument is you need to be intellectually consistent. And I think this is where moral arguments are very challenging, because there's some things that are uncomfortable about having a moral argument if you're willing to stay logical. Now, my goal with this podcast is not to have controversy, is not to have, I don't want you to, hate me, but I don't think abortion is right for almost all the reasons. And which means I think a human life starts at conception. In order to say that, and this is a very hard intellectual honest statement is that in the case of rape, I think that the little baby is still a human being, and I think a mother should carry it to conception. And I don't think they would have to raise the child. I think adoption is a great means of letting life go and making something good out of something bad. But that's a tough thing to say to somebody because it sounds terrible, and I understand that. Like if my daughter, heaven forbid, that they were raped and they got pregnant over that, and to say, I understand this is going to be their decision, but if they were asking my input, I would say that's a human being inside you that was, made in the eyes of God, and I don't think we should kill it. I think the most selfless thing you could do is to give birth to this little human, and if you don't want it, we can put it up for adoption, or we'll raise it. That's intellectually honest. And when you have these moral debates, that's the hard part. And I think you see that in Charlie's debates. There were some times where it would have been easy to say, man, I don't want to make you upset, so I'm going to say this, whether it's transgenderism or all these really controversial topics, to be willing to stand up and say, this is what I believe, even when it's not comfortable, or even if it means you're going to have some disagreements. I think that's important to, at some point, stand up for what you believe, but not in a hateful way. And I don't think, and I haven't seen every episode that Charlie ever put out, but I don't think he was saying these things in a hateful way. I believe he believed it. Therefore, he was willing to stand up to his convictions. And which leads me to my last point, because it's obviously a tragedy that Charlie was murdered, but it's also a tragedy that there was a 22-year-old guy that felt that the things that he was saying were worthy of killing him, because that young man has ruined his life. His family, his father turned him in. And I really haven't, after the first day, I really haven't been on social media because it felt bad. It felt like a really bad place. I just didn't want to be there. So I haven't watched the news a lot. I don't know this dude's story, but I know his dad turned him in, and I can't imagine how hard that was. And I know this young man potentially will go to jail for the rest of his life. If not, from what I understand, Utah is a death penalty state. He might be executed for what he did. The fact that he felt like another human being talking was to the point where he needed to stop the information that Charlie was sharing by killing him says something about our society. And if you're a father, I think we need to educate our kids. And I don't know what these parents were. I don't know how he grew up, and maybe they did all this stuff. I don't know. But you need to let your kids know that someone can disagree with you and you can like them, that you can be friends with them. And it's okay to have a disagreement. In fact, it's probably important that there's some people in their life that they disagree with, so they can learn how to live with people they disagree with. Because there's lots of people, you can see it in this, at least in the United States, we're pretty split on some of our opinions. But it doesn't mean we have to be enemies. It doesn't have to mean that we can't coexist with these people. But it is a very human nature. I was recently listening to a book, and most of the book was good. It was not the best book I ever read. And this guy said something, and I just disagreed with his argument. And the thought went through my head, I'm done with this book. I only had like an hour and a half more to listen to it. I'm like, I don't need to listen anymore. I don't agree with this guy. Well, up to that point, I was like, yeah, he's got some good stuff. I like what he's doing. And then he makes one point, and automatically, like, my human nature goes, nah, we don't agree. He's not my guy. He's not my people. That's a terrible idea, because he had some good stuff, and I'm going to let one thing just rob the rest of the book from me, because maybe what if the next 30 minutes of this book was going to change my life, opening my eyes to something I never thought about. And we do that a lot as humans. And as a man that wants to raise, strong, confident kids, and I want to be a strong, confident husband, I need to have the best ideas in the world so that I can share those. And I'm going to let one idea I slightly disagree with just stop me from getting that. That's just not right. And that happens a lot. It happens in politics so much. We get like an on-off switch for a person. Let's take Joe Biden, for instance. There's some things I did not agree with him. There's some things I thought were great. Like, as a firefighter, there's a thing called the Social Security windfall tax. I believe that's what it was called, where if you have a pension and you've also paid into Social Security, when you start collecting your pension, your Social Security benefits were decreased. Well, he got rid of that. Man, thank you so much, President Biden. That was amazing. That really, I don't think it was fair that they did that. You were able to get that changed. That was a good change. Thank you for that. President Biden, You opened the borders and millions of people came in. And with that came fentanyl. And I can directly see the years of Joe Biden, the amount of overdoses we went on fentanyl was immense. There's people that died because of the amount of fentanyl. Now, I'm not saying Joe Biden, he poisoned our society with fentanyl, but I'm saying his policies allowed people to come across the border, and the amount of fentanyl that came in and heroin killed people. I don't agree with that. I think that was wrong. But I'm holding two viewpoints. This was good, this was bad. And that's what I want for you. Be able to separate, like, oh, all Democrats are, crazy, all Republicans are crazy. Man, be a one-on-one. This Democrat, I don't agree with what they said. This Republican, I don't agree. Same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I think, has done some good things. I'm very thankful that this year, like, a third of my overtime is not going to be taxed. Thank you, Donald Trump. I appreciate that. That's going to benefit my life. How he's handled Russia, I don't think is the greatest. So I can have two viewpoints. You can have two viewpoints, and it doesn't mean you're a sellout or a traitor. You don't need to be in a camp. And when you don't have disagreements, you don't have arguments with people, I think that puts you in a camp because you get in these echo chambers. Social media is amazing. If you don't, as far as from building people that agree with you, go on YouTube and search something random, like, how do I raise a goat? For the next week, even if you don't click on any more goat videos, you're going to see goat videos. They're going to be how to raise fainting goats, how to, harvest goat milk, it's going to say, oh, you like this? Here you go, here you go, here you go. If you search, was Charlie Kirk a racist? You're going to get a bunch of videos about how racist Charlie Kirk was. If you Google, what were the awesome things Charlie Kirk did, you're going to see the opposite. You're going to see those things. So realize it's feeding into what you want to see, and realize that if you don't have a different opinion, you're not going to open your mind and go, hey, maybe there's two sides of this. Maybe there's good and bad. And that's not a way to live. It's not a way to live to have people agreeing with you all the time. So seek out people that have a different opinion and go into it trying to express your opinion in as logical a way as possible, but then also listen. Realize that if you can't clearly articulate someone else's thoughts, that you have not listened. And if you're not listening, you're not having an honest debate. You're not having an honest argument. You're just trying to, win. And you don't win when you don't listen. I think this world has gone backwards because we don't have someone like Charlie Kirk, for good or for bad, that, what he believed in, it was open and honest debate. I think one of his problems with the people that had the opposite view is the clips that he showed were him disagreeing with people. But, at that shooting, there was, I think, 3,000 people there. And I'm sure most of the people that went up on stage probably agreed with him. But they would only televise or stream or YouTube the ones that disagreed with him. So it looked like he was constantly arguing with people. But man, that is what a free democracy is. Like, it's an awesome place to be able to go and just disagree with people. So, have those conversations in person. Don't do it online. It's not successful. Try to understand where people are coming from, even if you don't agree with them. If you can understand where they're coming from, then it can be logical. Like, I think about, if I had an argument about abortion, it is my hope that when people are talking about the death of a fetus, that they don't believe that is a baby, because that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around, for someone to say, I think it's okay to kill a baby in a mother's womb, because they don't believe that. Now, I don't agree with them, but I hope that is their feeling, because that makes more sense. If you didn't think if this is a clump of cells, then yeah, I'd understand it would be like taking out a tumor that was growing in your body. I can understand that. I don't agree with you. I don't think science agrees with you, but I can understand where you're coming from. And because I can understand where you're coming from, I can see you as a human being. And that's important. I can see you as not evil. That's important. Because if I just automatically assume that you want to murder babies, I can't see you as a good person. I can't. And I don't want to have that conversation with someone who I think is horrible. So I need to see your side. I need to understand where you're coming from, even if I disagree with it. I think that's so important for a modern society, for a society that's going to progress and have good ideas and have this open discussion, which leads to more different ideas, different plans, different things that happen. And I encourage that for you. I know, however you're feeling one way or the other on this time in the world, I think we can probably not ever fix it, but we can make it better by be willing to have honest and open conversations. And that's my encouragement to you, is to find somebody you disagree with and talk to them, get their take. And, I think you can make at least your world better by doing that. I hope you have enjoyed today. I hope you get something out of it. I hope you put this into action. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title Podcast, and I will talk to you later.